especially tonight that you help me. Just kind of everything is flying through my head, all the stuff that I looked at, and how um just for lack of a better word, confusing. A lot of this is, Lord, help me to divide, uh, divide the usefulness from those things that would bog us down, Lord, and to draw lessons and practical applications and spiritual applications from this passage. Lord, help me to be clear and help me to uh, be just um, uh, just understandable and wise in what I say. Lord, just speak for me. So, Father, may your word speak to us on a personal level tonight, God, and we pray all this in your name. Amen. All right. So, last week, Nehemiah chapter 2, what happened? Just might as well do a little bit of review. What happened in chapter 2? Heads did not roll. Correct. That was good. I mean, one head in particular was the one we were concerned with, but yeah. So Nehemiah, he's before the king, and he's sad, and the king notices, but he doesn't kill Nehemiah for that, which is good. And he asks Nehemiah, or Nehemiah tells him, this is a situation, and I'm upset about it. And so the king's like, well, what are you asking? And Nehemiah says, basically, I'd really like you to let me go back and build the walls of the city of my fathers, like the wall and gates, and so it's like protected and it's like a real city. And the king's like, how long are you going to be gone? Nehemiah gives him the time. He's like, okay, cool. So the king sends one of his cupbearers to his homeland to rebuild the capital city. That in and of itself sounds amazing. But Nehemiah gets back, manages to rally the people to his cause in spite of some rather pointed and not insignificant opposition from a few guys, Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem. These three guys who are kind of the leaders of the opposition. Sanballat in particular, he's the name that comes up the most. So these guys stand in opposition to Nehemiah's work. Now, nobody knows what it is up to this point, except for like the few of the leaders in Jerusalem uh, that Nehemiah tells at the end of chapter 2. And so the people in Jerusalem are beginning to find out. And so chapter 3 is where we really start getting things going. Now, chapter 3 is heavy on architecture and maps and design and things that are very confusing without a map or some sort of diagram. And even in that, the diagrams that I saw are very inconsistent. There's a lot of debate over where the walls were at, to what extent they went to, where things were placed. Uh, Many of the commentaries that I read believe that because of the way that things are described in this chapter, that they believe that the passage as it stands, as we have it in our Bible, is incomplete. Like there were other pieces that just through the passage of time are missing. Now, it's not to say that the Bible isn't inspired. We believe that the original manuscript was inspired, but this is one of those things where just certain sections may have been lost. However, I would say that the most important parts of this passage are still intact. And we're going to see that as we go through it tonight. Now, I know what I've said could cause a little bit of consternation, in the part of saying, well, the Bible's, we often say the Bible is the complete Word of God. And yep, it totally is. But accounting for human error and that we don't have the original manuscript, that was the part that was inspired. What we have is the best translation that we have based upon the remaining documents. And so we take what we have and we gain practical applications from that. God has seen fit to let us have this in this time, and so we use that. All right. Anyone ready to throw me up to the council and be like, get this man out of here now? I'm not on the council until we have a backup study lead. Yeah, the one individual who said that they wanted to that they might take a Bible study, I know is now very busy. So I don't want to save for the next 18 years. That's going to run me till I'm 50, until I'm 53. No offense, but I don't want to be doing this till I'm 53. All right. So I'm going to be honest. This when we're calling out to read, there are going to be some fun names. It's going to be like reading through the Begats. But we'll just work our way through this, and we'll stop. We'll make some notes, and yeah, if you guys have questions, we'll do our best. So with that in mind, can I get someone to read the first 5 verses of Ezra? Not Ezra. Nickel in the jar. Nehemiah, chapter 3.
I can. Never mind.
You two can work it out.
Go ahead.
Oh, what? I demand a thumb war. Oh, wait. Wise Rat, I think that's you, sir.
Right? Okay, fine.
The lady has deferred.
Okay. Rebuilding the wall. Then Elishib, the high priest, rose up with his brothers the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him the men of Jericho built, and next to them Zakur the son of Imri built. The sons of Hassanai built the fish gate. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And next to them Mermoth the son of Uriah the son of Hakaz repaired. And next to them Meshullam the son of Berechiah the son of Meshezabel repaired. And next to them Zadok the son of Bana repaired. And next to them the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles would not stoop to serve their lord.
All right. Thank you, sir. That was fun. This chapter is 32 verses, so we're about 1/6 of the way there through that. All right. So that's a bunch of names and just kind of the same activity, but there's some good stuff here. So we see right from the start, who's the very first guy that's mentioned? The very first guy in the entire passage. The high priest, exactly. Eliashib. Eliashib is the grandson, just based upon genealogies, of the high priest when Zerubbabel, the very first return in the book of Ezra, Zerubbabel came back. The high priest in that time was this guy by oh shoot, I just lost his name. Jeshua. Jeshua is the high priest. We're pretty sure that Eliashib here is his grandson. So the high priest in this time gets up and he gets his priests and he says, we're going to go build this part of the wall. That in and of itself is amazing that the priests would devote themselves to this. Now, I don't know if you know this, but priests are generally not are not trained in the art of like bricklaying or masonry or any of this stuff. It's not like a side hobby that they often have. But they still saw fit to be part of the work. And it's mentioned that it's by the sheep gate. And that's just kind of like, well, cool. But I told you that this is kind of often hard to understand without seeing a map. Well, there's a map. So if you click on it, you can kind of see that there's that sheep gate. And this is one person's idea, and a lot of the stuff seems to fit fairly well, but again, there's a lot that's open to interpretation. But pretty much everyone agrees the sheep gate was in the northern bit of the wall, and it was near the temple. Now, does anybody know what the sheep gate was used for? Have any guesses?
Shearing sheep.
Kessa knows. Yeah. The sheep gate was used to bring in sheep, but it was so close to the temple because they were used for the sacrifices. Yeah, very much so. And so this is where the sacrificial lambs would be brought in. There would be a pool nearby or some sort of bath for washing them, and then they would be kept there until they were to be utilized for the offerings in the temple. And so because of that, and because of its proximity to the temple, that was the area that the priests took. Okay? Makes sense? So we have this group of people taking a location that would be of importance and significance to them. And what's more is we have a guy named who is in charge of the work. We see Eliashib, the high priest. He's the guy who's in charge of this section of the wall. And that's a theme throughout chapter 3. Then they do something that's not really done again in the chapter. The priests consecrate this portion of the wall. It's not mentioned again, but I think it's significant that there's quite a wall around Jerusalem. You can see it there, and there's a lot of sections. But the passage starts with the high priests and with this consecration of this section of the wall. I've mentioned before that the book of Nehemiah is one that is one of its themes is the idea of leadership, and I think this is a strong indicator and a very good point for any Christian leader is that your focus needs to be on God. Spiritual aspects are of the utmost importance. And so when Nehemiah sets this work in action, where does he start? Hey, Bob. He starts with the place of the most spiritual importance. Okay. Any questions about that little bit? Zcassa typing. Zcassa is still typing. Now hold your thoughts on that one, Kess, because we're not to the end of the chapter yet. And we'll continue to see certain themes on that idea, Kess, the one about all hands on deck, because that's definitely a part of this. But we'll get a little more into that as we go through. Yeah, yeah, you'll be good. Yeah, I'll bet you will. Sorry, what? All right. Then we see there's some other guys next to him. We see next to him the men of Jericho built. Now, where's Jericho? Anybody know where Jericho is in relation to Jerusalem? Currently Googling. I dig it. It's actually on the northeast side of Jerusalem, kind of east-northeast. And so we see that the people of maybe. It depends on which placement you believe it's at, but it was definitely east. I will say that. All right, so it's east. The people of Jericho were given the north side of Jerusalem. Now, why would that be the case? Some people believe it's because the people of Jericho, to a degree, would be utilizing that gate the most in traveling from their city. And so since it's an area that you're going to use and that you're going to benefit from, then it would be the location that you would feel the most connection to, and you would already have, you would be incentivized to do good work. And this is another part of Nehemiah's, strength and leadership, is that he places people in a position to work where they're already motivated to do so, or they already want to do a good job because it directly benefits them. Okay? So we see some other guys who are named. We see Zakur, the son of Imri. Then we see the sons of Hassanah. Oh, guess it dropped a map in here. I'm guessing that's Jerusalem or Jericho right there. See a number of Yerihos. Yeah, over on the right-hand side. You can see a couple of them. There's Vered Yeriho, Mitzpeh Yeriho, which is Jericho, and you can see another one up there. But yes, over in that area. At least that's where I found it. At any rate. I completely lost my place. There we go. Now we see in verse 4 this guy who is named Meremoth, the son of Uriah, who's doing some work. Now, that's not important yet, but keep that name in mind, okay? Just remember Meremoth, however you choose to remember that one. We'll come back to him. And finally, we go down a bit, and we come to the end of the little passage that Wise Rat read for us. Verse 5, we see these guys called the Tekoites. Now, who are the Tekoites? Have we heard of them before? Anybody know who these guys are? If you don't know, that's fine, but ironworkers. It is not cheating if you looked it up right before study. That means you did your homework. Yes, Eli. They are from a town to the south of Jerusalem called Tekoa, or Tekoa, or however you want to pronounce it. Now, the Bible talks about a few people that come from the city of Tekoa. One in particular. Anybody know of someone from the town of Tekoa? I'll take the guy. He's the one I'm after. Amos, that's right. Amos the prophet was a shepherd from Tekoa. So that gives us a little bit of a connection back to Scripture. So we see that these Tekoites, I don't speak Hebrew. They go and they work along the wall, but it says that their nobles, their higher ups in the city, would not stoop to serve their lord. That's very interesting. The phrase there actually means that they wouldn't bend their necks. It's the idea of when you would yoke together oxen to plow a field, the yoke would go across the neck of the ox, and so the ox would have to bend its neck in order to get the yoke on for it to pull. And so when it says these guys wouldn't bend their necks to the task, it means that they were not willing to work on the wall. Well, not kind of. It's a pretty harsh mark upon your record that you wouldn't do that. What's more so is that they're literally the only people in the entire passage who are listed that refuse to work. It's not a good look. However, again, keep these guys in mind. Remember the Tekoites, because, we may not be done with them. All right? Any questions on the first 5 verses so far? I see Kessa typing. No, they very did not. No, priests were generally kept within the temple doing the temple work. So this outside doing manual labor on the wall indicated a special circumstance, but even beyond a special circumstance, one that they recognize as ordained by God. Okay? Good question. Any other thoughts? I don't see anything else. So, Cass, since you deferred the first one, I decided to punish you with a longer set of verses. So this one's yours.
Joiada the son of Paseah and Meshullam the son of Besodiah repaired the gate of Yeshana. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And next to them repaired Melatiah the Gibeonite and Jadon the Meronothite, the men of Gibeon and of Mizpah, the seat of the governor of the province beyond the river. Next to them, Uzziel the son of Harhiah, goldsmiths, repaired. Next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, repaired, and they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them, Raphiah the son of Hur, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired. Next to them, Jediah the son of Harumath repaired opposite his house, and next to him, Hattush the son of Hashabniah repaired. Malchijah the son of Haram and Hashab the son of Pahath Moab repaired another section and the Tower of the Ovens. Next to him, Shallum the son of Halohesh, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired, he and his daughters.
Okay. Now there's some more cool stuff in here. Thank you, by the way. All right. So there's some stuff that's easy to miss if we're not paying attention. Now, that map that I posted up, the map of Jerusalem, the kind of the walls, that's a really nice reference to have because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that you can get bogged down on. Because a lot of these names, just like I have no idea where that is. Looking at the map is like, okay, I can kind of, thank you, relate to where that is or get some idea of where scholars think this might be. So we're talking about the walls. Another thing to note that I didn't touch on the first 5 verses is that you'll see that certain areas say that some sections of the wall were built while others were merely repaired. not all the walls were completely destroyed. Much of them were, but not all. Some of them only needed to merely be repaired. So it's not like, it's just like this. There weren't any pre-existing, walls or anything. It's just the vast majority were probably taken down. So we see here the first idea of kind of what it took to repair the whoa. Sorry. Lights just went dim for a second. So I'll go ahead and give warning. If my power goes out for some reason, I apologize. I tried to find a good diagram of what the gate would look like. Couldn't really find one. In ancient times, gates weren't built on hinges. What they would actually do is they were set with bars that would sit upon the gate that would hold them closed, and then there were sockets or slots in the wall. These bars. We kind of talked about not like medieval gates. We talked about these when we were back in Judges, when Samson, pulled the gate of the city off, and he's carrying these bars. He's carried the entire gates with him for like 10 miles outside the city. So kind of like that, he had this entire framework and the structure of the gates on his back, and that's what they're rebuilding here. And this goes true for most of the gates around the city. So we see some new guys that are here. One thing that's interesting to note is that we see that a couple of these guys, Melatiah the Gibeonite and Jadon the Meronothite, these guys from Gibeon and Mizpah, they built up until the seat of the governor of the province beyond the river. The seat of the governor. So it was difficult for me to fully understand, Cass. I went and tried to find I couldn't find any of them, so I don't have a good idea. Yeah, it was kind of difficult to just understand from words. If I find one, I'll be happy to let you guys see it, but I struggled with it. At any rate, we see that there's these guys that built up into the seat of the governor, or you can see it on the map. The Minshna Gate, and then just south of that, the throne of the governor. So hang on. We've talked about the province beyond the river being anything on the western side of the Euphrates. Was the governor of that entire region based in Jerusalem? Yep, once again, Cass is right on point. Yeah, this is if the governor was traveling and happened to come to Jerusalem, this would have been the spot where he would have stayed. That's all it means. We've talked about how frequently in old cities, the gate of the city was where a lot of the transactions and where the leaders would go and sit. So you can see right outside the gate, there's the guy who is the governor, the head honcho at the time. So he would be stationed right there. So absolutely. Yep, that's basically reserved for, governor, insert name here. Good pickup. Now we see some guys, they see that they restored Jerusalem up till the Broad Wall. As I understand it on this map, the Broad Wall is pretty much from the Tower of the Furnaces, kind of that southwestern wall down there. As I understand it, it could be wrong, but that's kind of how I'm understanding it. Now, there's an interesting name here. And it's one that we can kind of miss. And you probably wouldn't even notice it in your first time through. But if you go to verse 11, you see that there's this guy named Malchijah, the son of Harim. And you're like, who the heck is this guy? Who cares? I don't know this guy from Adam. And you're right, we probably wouldn't. But if you kind of go back a bit to the last chapter of Ezra, Ezra chapter 10, you look in verse 31, we're in the midst of the names of all these guys who went and married foreign women. And so there's just this listing that Ezra makes out just so these guys know. And we talked about how they put away these wives and they turned and they repented and they put away their wives. Well, in verse 31, we have of the sons of Harim. Harim, that sounds familiar. Eleazar, Ishijah, and some guy named Malchijah. He's back. Same guy. So 15 years later, we talked about how there's like that generally that 15-year gap understood between these two, in the ending of Ezra and the beginning of Nehemiah. Malchijah's still in Jerusalem. And when the proposal comes up to rebuild the wall, he is like, I am in. And he sets himself up, he and some of his men, to rebuild this portion of the wall. And I think it's really cool that a guy who was noted, marked at the end of one book for his sin, but also for his repentance, we see 15 years later, he is devoted to the work of the Lord under Nehemiah. That's cool. It's a nice little redemption arc for this guy. I like it. It's one of those little small stories the Bible doesn't go into huge depth about, but the Bible just affirming itself and showing that, there are these little stories where God's still working. You don't need a big story to see that God's hand is moving. I really like that. And the Gibeonites are still with Israel. It's true. Not only are the Gibeonites with Israel, they're doing work for Israel still. They're not just sitting out. I mean, you have the people or the nobles of Tekoa that didn't want to get into it. The Gibeonites literally were essentially slaves for Israel, and they're like, let us in on this action. It's so cool. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens here. Now, the very last verse here, verse 12, we see there's this guy, Shallum, the son of Halohesh. He's the ruler of half the district of Jerusalem. There were two guys mentioned who controlled different halves of the districts of Jerusalem. This is one of them. And so it says he and his daughters. I'm sorry, what? His Okay, so first things first, does that seem unusual to you in any way, shape, or form? Shall we talk about hyperlinks? You certainly could. I think it's interesting that some commentators thought it so strange, especially older commentators. They thought this so odd that the Bible would say that women worked on the wall, that they went out of their way to say that the district of Jerusalem, the fact this guy is a ruler of the district of Jerusalem, the idea of daughters was a kind of, not a euphemism, but like slang for other villages within that district, to try and explain away the use of women in the work, because it was just so unbelievable for the time. That is a real thing. You can look that up. But if you ask me, it's way more simple to just believe that Shalom went to go work on the wall and his daughters came with him. For crying out loud, we have priests working on the wall. That's kind of nuts. Let's see, have we already... I can't remember if we've read it because I might have missed it. Did we read it? Have we read about any other oddly named professions in this? I can't remember. Yes, we did. Back in verse 8. I'm sorry. Uzziel, the son of Harhaiah, they were goldsmiths. These are not people who are generally, sure, they work with metal, but they're not masons. They're not used to stacking stuff to make a building. They're more interested in jewelry. Yeah, exactly. The point of this passage isn't to talk about the wall. I mean, it kind of is. If you were a Jew in that time, you would probably have a much better understanding of what's going on. But for us who wasn't there, and I don't know if you know this, but anybody who's standing here wasn't around 2,500 years ago when this happened. We don't have anybody that we can go to and ask and get precise locations of all the points that are mentioned here. But what we do have, we have evidence of a need, a God or a spiritual command, a spiritual need that the community had, a man who got the call from God to stand up and lead the way, and then an answer on the behalf of the people. It wasn't that God only called Masons. God called his people to work on the wall. And I love the way one of the commentaries said, the most useful quality for a person of God is availability. That was so good. God likes to push you. He likes to put you in comfortable situations where you don't feel like it's one of your strengths. That's because it's not you doing it. God talks about that a lot. He likes to say, where you are weak, I am made strong. God likes to get the glory. So if it's evident that you aren't good at it, but it still got done in a good way, it must have been someone else. So yeah, absolutely. This is talking about women doing manual labor, and not just manual labor, they're freaking working on building the wall of the capital city of Israel. Oh man, I'm gonna get worked up, and there's no way I'm gonna get through this. I don't even know what time it is. Oh heavens. Okay. Well, time to pick up the pace. All right, let's we'll go through. Oop, there doesn't need to be a space there. There is not an R in Nehemiah. I'm so good at this, guys. You wouldn't believe it. Can I get someone to read those verses as soon as Fishsticks decides to post them? Fishsticks? Oh, great. Did Fishsticks just restart? Go ahead, Eli. Verses 13 through 16, if you would, sir.
13 through 16.
Mm-hmm.
Hanan and the inhabitants of Zanoah repaired the valley gate. They rebuilt it and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dung gate. Malchijah, the son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakerem, repaired the dung gate. He rebuilt it and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And Shalom, the son of Kol-Hoseh, ruler of the district of Mitzvah, repaired the fountain gate. He rebuilt it and covered it, and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And he built the wall of the pool of Shelah of the king's garden as far as the stairs that go down from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah the son of Azbuk, ruler of half the district of Besur, repaired to a point opposite the tombs of David as far as the artificial pool and as far as the house of the mighty men.
Thank you. All right. So fun stuff here. We see the names of a couple of cities or towns. We've got one called Zanoah and another one called where was it? I lost it. Oh, Beth. Yeah. Beth Hachem. Both of these locations are south of Jerusalem, and so it makes sense again that people that would be utilizing these gates and coming up from that part of Israel would be tasked with rebuilding these areas. We talked about this a little bit last week, Eli, but the Dung Gate, if you look at the map of Jerusalem again, what's happening is you can kind of see there on the southwest side, just outside the wall, you see the Valley of Hinnom. The Valley of Hinnom actually extends along the pretty much the entire southern side of the city. And what the Dung Gate was used for, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that's the term we get in the New Testament, Gehenna. The word for hell. Yeah, that's what Jesus is referring to. So it was the refuse dump. So the Dung Gate was literally where you took out the refuse from the city and dumped it down there. Yep, exactly. Yep. Everything was named so cleverly, It's like Sheep Gate for sheep. The Fish Gate, I didn't even talk about that. There was a fish market right there. That's why it was named. It's like amazing. There's going to be a water gate. Guess what came in there? Yeah, everything's generally the Mustard Gate. No, that's where the men came in. It's a misspelling. Oh boy. Now we see again the name Malchijah, different Malchijah, not the same guy. Although I do kind of feel bad for the poor guy. I mean, it says he repaired the Dung Gate. When that's Also, yes, Eli, it was a vineyard. Mm-hmm. It was actually kind of down in the direction of Tekoa, believe it or not. So we see the fountain gate being repaired. It's on the southeast side. Keep that map handy. It's super useful throughout all this. We see this thing called the Pool of Shelah. That's the Pool of Shiloh, or Siloam, as it's named in the New Testament. You can kind of see the Pool of Siloam along with the lower pool, right down to the southeastern edge on the map. And then we have Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk, not the same Nehemiah who's writing this. That guy was the son of Hakaliah. It says he's the ruler of half the district of Beth Zur. He repaired to a point opposite the tombs of David. In the King James, it says the sepulchres of David. And you can kind of see those listed on the map there. as far as the artificial pool and as far as the house of the mighty men. You want to talk about hyperlinks now? Have we heard about any mighty men before? Yeah, David had a few mighty men. Got a whole chapter devoted to these guys. They were awesome. This is the barracks that he would have used for these guys. This is where he would have housed his mighty men. All right. Any questions on all that?
So was Nehemiah a city?
No.
I mean, Jerusalem a city.
Yeah.
So, like in the map, it has City of David. So that was just like a city.
Okay.
inside a city.
Okay. So the city of David was originally Jerusalem was a fortress city known as Jebus, or Jebus. Jebus is how I normally say it. Controlled in Canaan. David captured the city, and that was the original city as it stood. That was the city, and it was gradually expanded upon as the city grew and it became the capital of the entire kingdom. But the city of David is where he first established his reign and set up Jerusalem to be the capital.
So the City of David was there originally, and then it expanded to
Yes.
Jerusalem, and then it kind of just became like a district that David basically stayed at. Well, his tomb and all that.
This is, again, when we're talking about the sepulchers or the tombs of David, these are the tombs of the kings, as they would be understood.
Okay. All right.
I saw a bunch of different maps that had them in a bunch of different places. There's some that say they're closer to the temple. They're actually on the Temple Mount somewhere. There are others that say they're down in the city of David, down on this side. It's depends on who you ask, and I am not expert enough to be able to say definitively, one way or another. Yeah. Or if someone is able to say definitively, I didn't find it, or didn't see enough conclusive evidence to be able to say. They're in Jerusalem somewhere, but yeah, the architecture, the layout of everything, it was 2,500 years ago, and like I said, there's nobody alive today that was there to clarify for us. What we've got is the scriptures here. But absolutely, you're very, very right. Excellent question. Because we often hear about the city of David and we associate that with Jerusalem, but improper, the city of David was a very small section of Jerusalem. One or two. All right. So I think we survived that bit. All right. So you guys have been good in reading so far, so I will go ahead and take the next large chunk. Verses 17 through 27. And after him, the Levites repaired. Rehum, the son of Bani. Next to him, Hashabiah, ruler of half the district of Keilah, repaired for his district. After him, their brothers repaired. Bavai, the son of Henadad, ruler of half the district of Keilah, the other half. Next to him, Ezer, the son of Jeshua, ruler of Mizpah, repaired another section opposite the ascent to the armory at the buttress. After him, Barak, the son of Zabai, repaired another section from the buttresses to the door of the house of Eliashib, the high priest. After him, Meremoth, I told you to remember that name, the son of Uriah, son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the door of the house of Eliashib to the end of the house of Eliashib. After him, the priests, the men of the surrounding area, repaired. After them, Benjamin and Hashub repaired opposite their house. After them, Azariah, the son of Maaseiah, son of Ananiah, repaired beside his own house. After him, Benui, the son of Henadad, repaired another section from the house of Azariah to the buttress and to the corner. Palal, the son of Uzai, repaired opposite the buttress and the tower projecting from the upper house of the king at the court of the guard. After him, Pedaiah, the son of Parash, and the temple servants living on Ophel, I don't feel comfortable calling it Ophel, repaired to a point opposite the water gate on the east and the projecting tower. After him, the Tekoites, repaired another section opposite the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Ophel. So there's a lot there. And it's easy to be like trying to draw the map. Thankfully, that's why I posted up a map to try and help us out. A few things. So we're working our way, if you've been following along on the map, we're working our way kind of counterclockwise around the wall. And so we're finally coming up the eastern side, heading north. You can see this place right on the wall, about halfway up on the eastern side, this thing called Ophel. Now the Ophel is kind of this hill that sits within the city of Jerusalem, and it's kind of this almost like southern extra hill leading off of the Temple Mount to the north. And the Ophel was where a few guys, certain people that worked in the temple would live. And we've talked about these guys, a fair bit in Ezra. This is where the Nethinim lived. Now, who were the Nethinim? Yeah, the temple servants, exactly. I guess basically had it out before I finished the question. All right. Yeah, they were the temple servants. These are the guys that Israel had conquered in times past, had brought them, had taken them, into captivity, but had devoted them unto God for temple service. Yep. Good. You guys are remembered really well. Excellent. Now, Mizpah was a city that is pretty much northeast of Jerusalem. There's a few. We talked a little bit about it in Judges. Mizpah came up a couple times, so it's there. Not a huge amount of significance as to where they were listed to work on the wall, as far as I can tell, because it would have been, because of their location, it might have been a little bit more northward if we were to go with that. But Nehemiah had his reasons. I'm sure he's shown a lot of cleverness in how he set it up. So we're working up our way to the wall, and we come to the area for the high priest Eliashib. His house is built into the wall. It's actually like his back wall of his house is the wall of Jerusalem. And so these guys are working along his house. And while they're working up in this area, there are other guys that are called out to work here. We see that these guys, Benjamin and Hashub, repaired opposite their house. So they have houses that are like right near the wall. And so they like walk out their front door and go work on the wall. Again, if you're living right there, if you're living right near the wall, that's your home, that's your neighborhood. If there's one part of the wall you want to be secure, it's probably the part where you're living. So again, Nehemiah shows just tremendous recognition and says, hey, you live here, you want to make sure things are good, how about you come out here and make sure that it's up to standard? And so these guys are working in areas where it would most benefit them to have the situation well in hand, thereby pretty much guaranteeing that it's going to be a good job. Now, I told you to remember his name, but Meremoth makes his return. Verse 21, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the door of the house of the high priest to the end of his house. Now, different people thought different things about that. Does that mean that the high priest house was just huge, that it actually was set apart for a large section, or was it something else? Again, I don't know. But I do know that this is the second time he's been mentioned. This is a guy who's worked hard. He did one section of the wall, and then he's like, you know what? Let me keep going. And again, we talk about the Tekoites. Their nobles refused to do any work, but the people of the city, they finished up a large section of the wall on the western side, and then they're like, you know what? We've got a few people back home that aren't doing anything. Let us step in and do a double duty. And so it says they repaired another section opposite the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Ophel. Thank you, Bob. I'm sure that's exactly how it looked. But it's cool to me. We talked about the shame of the noble of Tekoa in that they wouldn't bend the neck to work, but the rest of the people, the nobles of Tekoa are the only ones mentioned that wouldn't do anything. But we have multiple cases of where people would do double duty. So it goes both ways. And so there's a record kept both to shame and to honor for those who either did the work or did not do the work. And here we are 2,500 years later, and we have their names and we have records of them and lessons to be learned from them. I know it's past 10 o'clock, so I'm going to get one person to just kind of close out the passage for us. If someone wants to take the last 5 verses. Already punished Kess once. But Kess doesn't look like anybody who's stepping up to volunteers, so I guess that's yours.
Above the horse gate, the priests repaired, each one opposite his own house. After them, Zadok, the son of Immer, repaired opposite his own house. After him, Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, keeper of the east gate, repaired. After him, Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah, and Hanan, the sixth son of Zalaph, repaired another section. After him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, repaired opposite his chamber. After him, Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths, repaired as far as the house of the temple servants and of the merchants, opposite the muster gate, and to the upper chamber of the corner. And between the upper chamber of the corner and the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants repaired.
All right. So we see the horse gate. Yeah. Now, what were horses used for back in these ancient times? There you go. That's the big one. War primarily. Horses were primarily weapons. God tells the Israelites that when they get a king, the king is not to accumulate wives or horses. Wives because they will lead him astray. Horses because it will make him trust in his own strength. Possibly. I didn't see anything that seemed to indicate what what the size of the gate was or what its shape was. It's just kind of described in all the other ways that the gates are. But that's what it would have been used for, was for kind of leading to an armory of sort. Armory in the stables, obviously. We see that, the priests are working this area. Bob. There are a few other people that are working, again, opposite their own house, right in their own neighborhood. Now, there's this interesting one here that I didn't know entirely what to make of it, and I still don't. It says after him, the Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah. Also, I don't think that's the same Shechaniah as from the end of Ezra, the guy that I really like. Don't think that's him. We see Hanun, the 6th son of Zalaph, repaired another section. Does this strike anybody else as odd that it specifically says the 6th son? Yeah. Well, here's my question. What happened to the other 5? At least 5. We don't know. Bible doesn't say. We don't know what happened to the other 5. Now, is it possible that his other 5 brothers, were dead, or didn't make, or never returned from, the captivity? We don't know. But what we do know is that Zalaph had at least 6 sons, and the 6th one, Hanun, worked on the wall. So we have a record of obedience to God for at least one of the sons. Again, the name Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths again, work in the upper area of the wall, like we already talked about. And then even in the last verse, it says the upper chamber of the corner in the sheep gate, that area was worked by the goldsmiths and the merchants. That's like getting me to do it. I work retail. I have news for you. I don't know how many, you guys probably haven't seen pictures of me, but I am not a guy you would want building a wall. But these guys were jumped at the chance to work on the wall and reestablish the city. And that's it. That is Nehemiah chapter 3. And like I said, there is a lot here. It's, again, a very Jewish chapter. A lot of the names are Jewish, the locations are Jewish, the understanding of a lot of things are very Jewish. But I think there are definitely some principles that we can take here. We see good leadership qualities from Nehemiah, setting people up to work in places that were of great significance to them, recognizing the importance of God in all of this, in saying that the primary place, the first place to focus on, is this area outside the temple, the sheep gate for the sacrifices, and we're so much that we're going to get the priest to do it, and we're going to consecrate it as we consecrate the work to God. He another thing was, everybody had a name. Every section had a name associated with it. So there was responsibility. So if you didn't build, so if the wall didn't turn out great, guess what? Your name's written down here so you can be held accountable. But what was more is if you did a good job, then your name is recorded and you were held in esteem for your work. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's evidence of that in that, again, I don't know if you noticed, but there were a lot of different people named. We got the goldsmiths, we had merchants, we had women, all sorts of people did different things. Levites and priests, temple workers. You know something you didn't see? I didn't see the name of a single bricklayer or mason. Not one. Now, were there some? I'm sure. I'm sure there were probably a few in there. But they didn't take the lead role here. It was people who felt called and were available and willing to do the work. I mean, there's just crazy stuff here. And again, this is just kind of setting the stage. This is just the work, a summary of what happens. We haven't seen, some of the inner details, and we'll get to that in coming weeks. How long it takes, how, what kind of dynamics there were with the opposition. Sanballat isn't done. We'll see him a little bit more. A summary of that time when nothing in Jerusalem was business as usual. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But yeah, that's this is really cool. How under that national unity, we've talked about how the difference between Ezra and Nehemiah is also is in many ways spiritual versus physical. Ezra addressing primarily a spiritual need, with Nehemiah addressing more of a physical need. But Nehemiah addressing the physical need was also under the banner of the spiritual need of the people. It was God looking out for his own people. And so this national unity that we talk about wasn't strictly from the idea of, just for nationality, but it was because God was looking out for his people and God wanting what was best for his people. Yep. And we see we talk about Nehemiah stepping into the picture. And yes, this is his book, this is his story. But the story of Nehemiah doesn't fully happen unless the people that he leads effectively step in to help. And so, yes, there is this unity. And I say I haven't said this in a while, but it's something I really honestly believe in, is harmony, unity and harmony. You have a bunch of different people, probably very few Masons, seeing as how we didn't have any mention in the passage, but they all came together for one task under the banner of obedience to God. Ooh, I like that, Kess. The attention given to details of the gate repair, the doors, its bolts, and its bars, means that the doors, bolts, and bars mattered to God. Yeah, very true. That's excellent. I know I've rambled a bit, guys, and I apologize. Yeah. And note that it was the gates that were given the most attention. The gates are, under, by pretty much no uncertain terms, the most important part of a wall. You don't have gates, nobody can get in, but nobody can get out. They were the most ideal location to attack if you were trying to siege a city, and as a result, they were the ones that had to be the most well defended and the most the strongest, the most well constructed. Oh, we got more for Nehemiah on the IGO prayer and prayer in a moment. What did you call them, Kess? You called them something. I can't remember what you called them. Prayers in the moment. Just like, oh, A flare prayer. That's it. Yeah. Flare prayers. Yep. Nehemiah's good at those. We'll see a bit of that more. But yeah, I like to think that in many ways, Nehemiah is the progenitor of the flare prayer. Any other thoughts, guys? Any other applications? Anything you see that you think needs to be brought up, or just questions you have? Like I said, I want to try to answer questions because I know